are pretty tired of the rain. So, couple of housekeeping items. Okay, we're going to try to start on time at 6:30, so we're going to start. We'll be all done by 8 o'clock. That's the plan. For those of you who are new to a Ward 5 meeting, to those of you who are, first of all, Joel did raise your taping, just so you know that you are, there is a camera here, for anybody who is concerned about that. For those of you who have never been to a Ward 5 meeting, over here on the table here is informational materials, things about parking, street sweeping, yard waste, how to get rid of monitors, as well as your recycling stickers. If you want to put them on your trash barrels because you have so much recycling, you don't want to pyramid it in those blue baskets, but you'd like to actually use a barrel. So those are all over there. Feel free to help yourself. There's also water.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. There's also water up here. If anybody would like some water, it's all up here on the table. You know, feel free to come up and grab a bottle. So the way tonight is, first of all, I'm Councilor Barbara Murphy, for those of you who don't know who I am. Welcome, thank you all for coming out. This is, a very a topic of concern to many stakeholders in the city, so it's great to see such a nice crowd here to discuss Roosevelt Park improvements. The way tonight is going to work is I'm going to kind of open it up, and then Steve Winslow's going to say a few words. After that, Steve O'Neill from HSI, who is an architectural firm, who's right here behind me, Councilor Winslow, Councilor Lodge is here. Steve is going to give you a presentation on all of the work that his firm has done on the park, coming up with a solution to the problems this park faces. We also have a Pat McGuire, who is from Activitas, is that how you say it? Activitas, who is a sports field consultant and a landscape architect. He is en route here. He is stuck on 128. He also does have a presentation. So hopefully the traffic will break a little bit and he will be here on time. And then we have Marie Ruderman, who is an independent consultant, and she is a toxicologist. So we have a number of folks here who are going to give you a lot of information tonight. I would ask that everyone hold their questions until the end. Because what we normally find is that some of the questions that will be asked will be answered throughout the presentation. Plus, we want to make sure that the entire presentation gets heard by everybody. Once we turn it over to the Q&A period, because we do have a large group here and a lot of interest from different stakeholders, I would ask that if you do have a question, that you ask one question, and that we go around the room so that everybody has the opportunity to ask a question, make a statement, or get any information they want. And if we have time, we will circle back to people who have more than one question. So that's kind of the lay of the land for this evening. Once again, I thank you all for coming. Does anyone want to grab some water before we start? No? Anybody have to carry all that home again? That's okay. All right, Steve, Councilor Winslow.
All right, thank you so much, Councilor Murphy, Barbara. Thank you for setting up the meeting. I'm Steve Winslow. I'm City Councilor at Large. I'm a Maplewood resident, so pretty close to the park here. I often walk and bike right down to the park and school, so very close. Just some of my background. At one point in my life, I have a background as a chemical engineer, as well as I helped write the state's toxic waste cleanup regulations and enforce those. So I do have some overall background in the area. I just had a question about you folks. How many people here are parents of Salemwood students? Just raise your hands. Okay, so we have a few. How many people here are parents of kids who are playing on our parks generally in Malden? So we have a lot of parents of kids and stuff like that, so great. My personal connection with Salemwood is, I don't know how many people remember before the school was even built, but there was a series of meetings before all 5 schools were built. And one of the things that came up for this school was, one of the original plans was basically where Roosevelt Field is now. The original plan was to have it be a parking lot, if anybody remembers that. And when I went to that public meeting, I commented, like, let's try to save as much of that as possible. And so one reason why the parking ended up under the field house was that architects in the city worked to get that parking put under the field house. And also the MRA over time worked to get the parking on along where the bike trail is. So we saved a lot of what was the athletic field back then. So that was really important, and it was great to see that happen. On the school committee, I was on the school committee for 6 years, and Ward 6, which I represented, doesn't have a school. So I made a special effort to reach out to Salemwood and work with a lot of the parents and teachers here. Dr. Pons was the principal at that time. I would come here on Fridays, and he'd have some kids playing in the gym on a Friday afternoon after school. So I enjoyed that. So I do feel I have a special connection with the school. One of the things I know there were some messages that went out about what this meeting was about grass versus turf, and I just really want to kind of emphasize that what we're really trying to do is really find what works for this field. And I have a little bit of things. Did everybody have a nice Mother's Day? Did all the mothers? I just wanted to, this made me think of my own mother. Here's my mom when I was a kid. We're sitting there having a lunch or something like that. That's me. Amazingly, I had hair at some point. You can't believe that. But I was one of 12 kids. And it was a really big day just before the start of school when we would go down and buy school shoes. I would get one pair of shoes a year. So I had to have a pair of shoes that were worked at school, but also I really loved sports. So I would play sports, pretty much for 3 or 4 hours after school, and then all day in the summer. So I needed shoes. So if you can see, these are the shoes I wore, at least at that time. So you can see it was a practical pair of shoes that could be held up under that weather. I have to say, I think sometimes I did wear Converse. I grew up in California, but they were definitely sneakers. So just it's the type of thing to think about that. What we're really trying to find out is what kind of shoe fits for Roosevelt Field. There's a lot of different options we can hear about. The consultants are going to talk about that, and I think it's a good thing. We got to, like I say, what shoe is going to fit here. I mean, you can have dress shoes and that work in some situations. You can have, sneakers. We can have high heels. There's all different shoes for the right situation. And I think what we really want to hear about is what shoes and options we have here. And I do want to also say, when I got elected, and even as I was running, I know I reached out to Kathy Sullivan, sat down with her during the election, and I know that people here really, and Kathy in particular, focused on talking about grass. And when I got elected last year, I sat down with folks, Steve O'Neill, Debbie Burke from MRA, and Bob Knox from DPW, and the mayor, and I said, I really want to see Roosevelt Field improved, because the students at Salemwood really deserve this. It's the one park, I've served on the Open Space Committee several times, it's the one park in the city that we have not improved as significantly as other places. So I really thought that was important. I said, what can you tell me about grass? And so because of that effort, the city did do that analysis, and Steve O'Neill, who was the person who led that up, and so I just really want to lead into Steve's work and really have him talk about what he has looked at as a person who works to build fields all over. Some are grass, some are turf, and really to look at what his analysis is. So I want to hand this over to Steve O'Neill so you can hear what he presented to the mayor and the DPW and myself as we were contemplating going forward with this project. So Steve.
Thank you, Steve. I just want to see, can people hear me if I speak about the mic? Can people hear me okay? Because I like to talk with my hands, and the mic will be going all over the place. But let me pull this up a little bit. So again, just by way of background, my name is Steve O'Neill. I'm with the firm Hayner, Swanson Incorporated. We're civil engineers and landscape architects. I'm an associate and principal engineer. And I am the contract manager really for a lot of work that we do in the city of Malden on a lot of the municipal infrastructure needs of the city. I'm going to go way back. I'm a Malden native. I lived here until about 20 years ago. I have fond memories of playing for the Bears in the Malden American Minor League, Little League on this field. As I get a little older, I enjoyed playing on this field when I was a student at Malden Catholic, and we have some spirited games against Malden High School. So I'm well familiar with Roosevelt and some of the inherent challenges that are there. So I was brought in under my contract with the Malden Redevelopment Authority to help the city plan, program, and budget for improvements to Roosevelt Park. This is a project that we know has been on the radar of the city going back to 2009. In my prior employment at Meridian Associates, I did a very similar exercise in 2009. We came back to revisit it again in 2014, and here we are again in 2019. The challenges that we talked about 10 years ago exist today. Roosevelt Park has been identified in the City of Malden's open space plan as a critical recreation asset for the city. It's been identified as a facility that needs to be improved. It's got inherent problems with largely the drainage. It's a poor draining site. It's pretty well demonstrated the difficulty because of the intensity of use that the field gets for the city to be able to establish and maintain a natural grass field that is playable, it performs well, and it can basically sustain. So I'd like to, with that backdrop, I'd like to talk a little bit about the project that's proposed, some of the site conditions and challenges, and what some of the proposed solutions are. So the project essentially will be to replicate the active athletic fields that exist in the park today. That consists of 2 softball diamonds in opposite corners of the field, together with the rectangular overlay. Now, what's a rectangular overlay? That's a field that really any sport that needs a rectangular surface to play on can use. Soccer, lacrosse, football, possibly even field hockey. This project will essentially replicate those program needs. The site, the challenges. The site lays low. Everyone that's familiar with it, you have Salem Street to the north, you have the bike path to the south. It drains high to low from Salem Street to a section of the site here that's an open wetland. I believe that wetland was an integral design component of the school project as an element of the site drainage system for the school. This wetland accepts drainage from Salem Street, from the school proper, as well as from the field. The drainage from Salem Street and the school gets to this wetland by an underground system of pipes. The drainage from the field drains overland to the wetland. The drainage accumulates in the wetland, and then it discharges via pipes into the Saugus Branch Brook flood control conduit. That's a DCR conduit that runs within the bike path. So that's how the drainage works. The site itself being low-lying, some of the problems with drainage that we have done some very preliminary soil investigations, borings, where we drill a hole, we pull the sample, we look at the soil, and we look at what the soil is made up of. The soil in the park is characterized by a topsoil layer that ranges from nothing to about 6 inches. That's the topsoil. Immediately below the topsoil is what we use to describe, we call it urban fill. It's basically a non-native, heterogeneous disturbed material. It's basically an indicator that this site has been filled at some point in time in order to make it suitable for today's use. One of the problems with urban fill is its poor draining. So you have a strata below the surface that's poor draining, together with limited topsoil, and topsoil that's been really over-compacted. So the site itself tends to hold water. The water is not able to infiltrate into the soil and make its way to the wetland, nor because of the grading is it able to drain positively across the site to the wetland. So the characteristics of the site make it a challenge. That's compounded by the fact that a large majority of the site is in a flood zone. It's an area that's been designated by FEMA as a 100-year floodplain. So it's a site that's basically wet. So the challenge now becomes, how do we deal with that? What do we do? Soil that's wet causes problems for the users. After a rain event, Parks and Rec has to cancel events on the field for a prolonged period of time. People aren't able to use the field. So really we're trying to solve drainage problem as well as a problem with the surface. So we looked at it, and looking at it pragmatically, it brought us very quickly to synthetic turf being well suited for this particular site and the challenges that it offers. The synthetic surface and the infill synthetic surface is comprised of a couple of layers. There's a drainage layer, which is a layer of crushed stone. It probably has in the order of, 6 to 8 inches. Within that stone, there are underdrains. The underdrains will drain via pipes to the wetland. Above the drainage layer is a 2-inch layer of a finer stone, which is what we call a choker stone. That is a stone that is finer graded, meaning it's a smaller stone. It allows the field to be graded properly to achieve proper surface drainage. But most important on a field like this, we're going to get exceptional vertical drainage through the synthetic turf, through the choker stone, into the stone, and into the underdrain system. So it's going to very quickly drain rainwater in any rain event away. It's going to result in a field that's going to be playable, if not during a rain event, very quickly thereafter. With the synthetic turf surface, I'm confident that we will not, I won't say we will not, because Mother Nature, you never know. But the instances where the city is faced with the users being impacted by rain events will be minimized. So it's positive in that regard. The synthetic turf surface, it's carpet. In this program, we are planning to put a resilient pad. There's growing concern for concussion. So as an added precaution, we're going to add the resilient pad to the system. So there'll be, on top of the choker stone, we lay out a resilient pad. On top of the resilient pad, we lay out the carpet, which is the turf, and then we introduce the infill. As presently contemplated, the infill will be a sand rubber mix, and yes, right now, it's planned to be crumb rubber. The city has agreed to introduce and add alternate to the bid specs for an alternative infill material. That alternative infill material is likely, we're still evaluating which alternative material we'll use, but there seems to be a leaning towards coconut fiber or coconut husk. It's an organic material. The benefit to the coconut husk is as a field that will give improved performance, improved playability, and it also goes to the issue of increased surface temperatures. With the crumb rubber infill, you tend to get increased surface temperatures, but with the coconut husk, it will mitigate that. There will still be higher surface temperatures than a natural grass field, but the coconut husk infill will mitigate some of that increased surface temperature. The organic infill comes with its own issues. There are issues of increased maintenance requirement for that surface. And then, of course, there's cost. The added cost of an infill surface on a field such as this could be in the order of $75,000 to $100,000 in terms of added cost. So that's where we're at. A couple of things that I'd like to talk about in regards to natural grass. I was a college athlete. I coached high school soccer for 20 years. If I had my choice, I'd play on natural grass. It would be my preferred surface to play on. we gotta look, I have to look at this pragmatically and see what are the challenges. Not excessive use, but you want to maximize the use that you can get on this field. Another issue is when you look at considerations such as, I hear people talking about organic maintenance programs to eliminate the need for fertilizers, for insect control, weed control. It comes with all sorts of inherent challenges with an organic fill or organic maintenance practices. So we're concerned for that. Another concern, frankly, is in the urban fill. The urban fill also has characteristics in it. It's heterogeneous soil. There's gravel, there's sand, there's bricks, some glass, there's wood ash, there's coal ash, there's coal. There's all sorts of stuff in urban fill. With that comes things such as metals, polyaromatic hydrocarbons. So there are constituents in the urban fill that give us pause. In a synthetic turf surface, this project will be very similar to the Howard Park project that's down out by South Broadway Plaza behind Malden Catholic that the city completed in 2015. Working closely with DEP on that project, with the urban fill we had to create with the synthetic turf surface, we had to create a separation from the proposed grade to the urban fill of 15 inches of clean material. In areas where it was natural grass, such as this, if we went with natural grass, we would have to create a 3-foot separation from the surface to the urban fill. That separation is to provide an adequate separation or barrier for users of the field to come into, to minimize the exposure pathways, whether it's contact with the urban fill, and everything that can work its way up through the soil, so there are requirements there. So in order to construct a natural grass field at this site, it would add a cost, because now this material, surplus material, we take the dirty material out, and it has to go to a licensed in-state landfill. Again, that comes with a cost. So to do that, in looking at this facility, it could be upwards of $450,000 premium to go with the natural grass field. So when we step back and we talk about it, I'll close my remarks, and I'm going to allow Captain Wire, who just arrived. That's the sports field consultant and landscape architect who's working with us on the project. I'll let him make some remarks. But I would like to say, going to the theme that Councilman Winslow brought out, what we're really trying to do is to come up with a facility that's the best fit. It's the best fit for the city of Malden. It's affordable. It's lasting. That will service the users, all users. The users from the general public, the users from the school community who use it for recess, lunch, phys ed, the myriad of local youth programs that use the facility, and any other users. There are always opportunities for rentals. I'm sure that the Parks Department gets inquiries for rentals. So we're really trying to come up with a facility that is the best fit for the city of Malden at this location, given the site conditions. So with that, okay.
You actually covered this pretty good. I don't know if we want to chat more about things. By the way, I had a lovely tour of your other part of your school. It's very nice. So sorry for being late. Yeah, I think we can go right to questions if we do have some questions about turf. Steve did a pretty good job of talking about it. We want to talk about how it plays, how long it's going to last, any of the concerns that people might have about it. I'm happy to address that. I have done probably 500 of these in my life, and I, like Steve too, was a college athlete, have an undergraduate degree in both landscape architecture and turf grass and golf course management, so I too would prefer grass here. I just don't think it's practical to think that even with the best maintenance practices that you could possibly have in an urban situation, that you're going to be able to keep a good, safe grass field here. So I too think that grass is synthetic turf is the appropriate surface to put here. Also tonight here, Marie Rudman is here, who is a toxicologist with Enviro Risk Solutions. If folks have any questions about the turf and health and safety that I can't personally answer. I have done synthetic turf, as I said, probably 500 fields in my life. Many of the fields that are around here in Malden I've worked on throughout Massachusetts. We do all the work for the Patriots, all the work for a lot of the educational institutions in the city like BC and Harvard and MIT and Simmons. So it's something that we're very familiar with. We have clients who have looked at many of the same issues that you're looking at, overuse, underperforming fields that we're trying to make better for not only college athletes, but also kids who live in communities as well. So we'll open it up for questions. Ma'am.
So, may I ask you, you said that
Speak loud, stand up and speak loud. Actually, introduce yourself and speak loudly, please.
Okay. So my name is Viviana, and I'm having kindergarten. She'll probably be here in Salemwood. And I'm a concerned mom, and I just want to ask, she's a toxicologist?
Toxicologist,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just that, I'm a concerned mom, so just want you to answer me, I mean, how safe, I mean, I'm asking the question, is it safe for my daughter to play on, I mean, but you need to convince me, not just say,
Sure.
you know, yes, it's safe.
It is an important
Because when I
question.
research, is saying it's not safe.
Yeah.
So how can you answer?
Yeah, it's an
With
important.
facts.
Yeah, it's an important question that you ask. I have children who aren't as young anymore, but they grew up playing on these fields too. I don't have an issue having my kids play on those fields. I play on the fields myself too. There is, if you read the internet, there is absolutely a lot of speculation that they aren't safe. There have been worldwide over 100 studies that have been done that look into the safety of synthetic turf. And these are peer-reviewed scientific studies that are based in fact, that say that there really isn't a risk or a minimal risk for playing on these fields. And there was some, a news story on ESPN probably 8 years ago, 6 or 8 years ago, that sort of raised people's concerns about that. And it was really more based on speculation and not fact. It was a soccer coach who said, hey, I've got two goalies who happen to have cancer at the same time. It must be the turf. Which, you know, anytime cancer comes up, that's people's antenna go up. It's affected probably everybody in this room. I know it's affected my family pretty seriously too. But the studies, the actual scientific studies that exist show that the risk is actually pretty minimal. For this stuff, there is stuff in crumb rubber that's not great, but it's not bioavailable, so your kids can't eat it and ingest it and get it into their system that way. They can't get it on their skin and have it go in. This is the expert here, not me. I'm speaking more as a layman, as if I were you, right? You just can't get those things into your body. They exist locked up really tight in that rubber, so that you can't really get that. Really get into your body. So Marie can talk. She did what I think is a pretty interesting study, because the other studies have looked at this and said, look, this is, again, materials that are in here that aren't bioavailable, and therefore the risk is low. But she said, what if they were bioavailable? What if we could get it? So she did some pretty extreme testing where she used acids to pull those materials out and then tested those materials to say, okay, if the kids could get those materials, and if they were playing on these fields for 30 years, X number of hours a day, and they were able to get every bit of those materials that are bound up in the rubber out, what would the risk be if that was the case? So to take the extreme measures of this, I'll let her talk about her own studies, but what she found is that there actually was still a very minimal risk, an insignificant risk that really shouldn't be concerned about.
And if you do go to the EPA website, EPA actually has a spreadsheet. It's an Excel spreadsheet. They have 90 studies on there that describe the potential toxicity of synthetic turf fields, and they summarize actually very well each of the individual studies. And over and over and over again, you'll see no significant risk, no significant risk, or no correlation between cancer and using synthetic turf fields. There are a lot of studies out there. If you actually look at the peer-reviewed studies, that will show that there's no significant risk with using these fields and that they're safe for use. EPA has not come out with a definitive statement just yet because they're still reviewing, they're collecting
I'm
our
glad you
data.
mentioned that, because that's the truth.
Right.
They didn't, and
Right.
they couldn't.
Well-
They couldn't have a final statement because they couldn't guarantee it. And they know, and the industry of the turf knows it. So I'm just telling, because, that's good to talk about the project, but I think that as parents, I don't know if there are more parents, they need to take a known decision. If I know the risk, I can take the decision,
Right.
okay?
Right.
So I'm just, we need to know that some countries are banning the turf, okay? Sweden had banned it. France, it's becoming. We need to know that. There is evidence, even if it's not significant, but there is evidence that this turf is not good. So I just wanted to say that. And there is a risk. Now, we are going to take the risk. We are going. There is no 100% saying there is no risk. So this is what we need to know. So as a parent, am I going to take the risk or not? So if you tell me, okay, the risk is 0.001 that your daughter will have, this is very not significant. For me, it's devastating if I have this 0.001 versus playing on nature, which is what we are made for to live within nature. But you mentioned the fertilizers and the pesticide, and I didn't think about it, to be honest. So now, either solutions. So now I'm sad. Am I going to choose the pesticide and the fertilizer, or choose? How did we survive? How our grandparents, they had fun, they played football. We had great mega stars of football who played. The Brazil players, they play in the streets. So I know that this project will pass, so I just, it's Ramadan, I need to leave, but I just wanted to say that we're taking risk, okay? There is no risk, but, things
But
will happen.
if you do read the studies, according to EPA and DEP standards, this is an acceptable risk.
Believe me, I'm just going to take 2 more minutes. I need to leave because my daughter, I mentioned it before, my daughter at 5 months, she was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease that is caused by environmental toxins. This is rare, we don't know. And she was followed at Dana-Farber's Cancer Institute for 2 years. My daughter is fine now. But I saw kids and babies and infants doing chemotherapy. For me, I researched every cause of cancer that can, I researched everything. So I'm very, very knowledgeable parents, and I'm still checking everything because I don't want my daughter to be through that again. And I'm trying to avoid any toxins. Now, you're telling me that my daughter will be playing on a synthetic, and this rubber thing, you said that it will not. They did experiment even with water, and this product came out of this. And within 7 to 10 years, it's going to become like a powder, a black powder. That and this black powder is inhaled. For me, I would sincerely, if the project passes, I will need to leave the town because I cannot. I need to research safer options for my daughter but I understand if some parents, they have other considerations, which I respect. Yes, thank you.
Before something? My name is Jade. I am a mom like you, and this is my son. He plays football for the Malden Top Warner. He has played football for the last 2 years on turf. And like you, I'm a concerned parent. This child fell on concrete outside of school and had a really serious bad infection, a staph infection. I spent 2 weeks in the Mass General with him, and that infection was really bad. It got into his bloodstream. My son has been playing Pop Warner on turf. He has fallen multiple times. He has cut up, but not once did he infect himself from playing on turf. So as an informed parent, I understand you. I work in the medicine field. I understand how you feel. And as an informed parent, I understand that. But it's up to you how you feel. It is up to you to make that decision. But it doesn't mean that everybody else has to make the same decision as
That's
you.
what I
We
told-
are all
that's what I
entitled to
said.
make that
Yeah,
decision.
that's what I said.
Okay?
Yeah.
And these children have the right to be on safe ground.
Yeah.
And grass, as much as you want to understand it or not, it's not safe because it has pesticide, it has metals, it has everything. And it's been tested. So we need to make informed decisions for our children. And believe it or not, I'm sorry, turf is better than grass at this moment in time with everything that's in it. And I honestly feel like we need to make the best decisions for our children.
So you talked about the project that they're looking into other infills, but that's just something you're looking into, is that correct?
I think I can speak for Councilor Murphy and I. We are, when this project goes out to bid, the infill, the alternate infill will be specified, and that's something we'll seriously look at. I know, and just as the two parents here expressed, having worked with top experts in our state to try to address these kind of issues of toxic substances around schools, as much as you try to find out how much risk something might cause and whether it can be inhaled or contacted, you can never say for certain that there's no risk. So one of the things is to do the risk reduction and try to look at something else. We are going to put that bid in, and when we know what that cost is, we will do that. And I think that I think it's the type of expenses we're talking about. I think that's, for me personally, I think it's worth it for our kids to give them that little extra part of risk reduction. I think that's where I am, and I think, but we are seriously looking at it. And I think also Councilor Murphy and as Patrick and Steve emphasized, there's also the added benefit of the natural material gets less hot, and it actually has some better moisture holding characteristics. So there's some advantages to that in playability. So it's not just there's several advantages to that. So, but we are here, and we're not putting out that RFP just to appease people. We will seriously look at that cost when it comes in, and if it's within reason, if it's within this amount of money we're talking about, we will work to see and try to get that money to make that happen. So that's I'd like to say, and that is one level of risk reduction. It still means we will have carpet mixed with maybe a natural material. That carpet, one of the things we'll work at is to make sure that's a long-lasting carpet. I know when I worked on a field up in Gloucester, we made sure we specified high-quality carpet. One of the things, just like when you buy carpet for your own house, you can buy carpet that'll wear out in 3 years, or you can get stuff that'll last 15 years. So we will work with our consultants to make sure we're getting a long-lasting product that will be of value to the community, and we will, we'll be seriously looking at that other type of infill. I mean, I think we do hear, and from, we have toxicologists here, and the studies that I've looked at personally, I mean, I looked at what you sent along, Kathy, and that, those scientifically peer-reviewed studies is the way our state experts look at whether there's a cancer risk and whether there's a cluster. And these are the type of things, if you remember Woburn and those situations there. These are the type of methodologies that they use to identify those areas as really serious. They've used that methodology here. They have not found, across the country, a significant risk being identified through those methodologies. So I think it's, the basic way we approach toxic, materials out in our environment. We've met those standards. You can always try to go a little bit further, and we're going to look at that. And if it's within cost reason, we will work to make that happen. All right, thank you.
Just this, I just wanted to add something. Just that being said, I just wanted to read my statement while I'm here. Going with the fact that you're not actually saying that you're not going to use the crumb, so I'm going to read my statement. So I'm here tonight not to win a disagreement. Instead, I'm here to advocate and to try to protect the health and safety of our students, our kids at the Salemwood School. The plan to artificially turf the field with a crumb rubber infill is not only removing our green space, but is exposing our children to crumb rubber, an unregulated product that is now the focus of major ongoing studies by the EPA, the Consumer Product Safety Commission, the California Office of Environmental Health Hazards. The Consumer Protection Safety Commission outlines these precautions. Wash hands after play, remove shoes after play so not to bring particles inside, shower after finished playing to remove crumb particles from the body. So I ask you this, will our students here at Salemwood be able to comply with these precautionary guidelines after playing on the field? They will not. Instead, the crumb rubber will be tracked into our cafeteria, into our classrooms, and into our hallways. I am here to ask why the Salemwood community was not notified about this major renovation or asked for input. Do the students who attend the Salemwood School and their families not have a voice in our community? City leadership has been provided with many scientifically based documents which outline the current studies that are now underway, which highlights the concerns of pediatricians, environmental scientists, and toxicologists who are alarmed about children coming in contact with these harmful substances, toxic inhalants, and known carcinogens that are in crumb rubber. Also provided were resources to seek out alternative opinions from professionals who are willing to consult. Contact information for the UMass Toxic Use Reduction Institute, the National Grass Advisory Group, Osborne Organics were resources that were presented. But it appears this information has been ignored and the crumb rubber plan has been forged and forced forward. Here are my questions for city leadership. Why have we not sought out alternative opinions and consultations? Why was the Salemwood community not notified of this important community meeting tonight? There was no notices gone home to our children. There was no robocalls or Connect Eds sent out to our children. But yet we have people here from the athletic community, which is great. I'm glad. I want to have this aired out. Nobody sent anything home to our kids. Their parents didn't know a thing about this meeting. This project will directly affect students and parents during construction. Why was the Salemwood community not asked for input about the renovation? What do our kids need? What would our kids like? They like a basketball court. They need handicap accessible playground. They would like swings. These are the things our kids, the poorest kids in our community, you're turning your back on them. And yeah, I'm angry because we have been ignored, and we have been ignored across this city. We have 1,200 kids here. 70% of those kids are English language learners. 70% of them are poor. We feed them. Yeah, I'm angry and I'm upset that we have been ignored all these years. I've had it. I've had it with this. I know you want your kids to play. That's great. That's really great, but you have no idea what we do in a day here. Way more than teach. You have no idea of the social, emotional issues these kids come to school every day with. They're not going to wash their hands. A lot of them don't take showers in a week. We feed them, we clothe them, we hug them. We are their parents for 8, sometimes up to 9, 10, 12 hours a day. So I am done being ignored by the city and the leadership. Done!
I'd like to piggyback on that. Penny Callan, grade 6 at Salemwood. I don't have anything written, but I absolutely agree with everything Kathy has said. What we do for our kids here, the city has ignored. And putting the rubber in, it's the bigger problem. I see this outline. Our kids want basketball courts. I asked them today, what do you want? I asked our kids. No, nothing went home, nothing in several languages. I'm so glad 2 parents showed up. When you asked, you know, how many parents are here from Salemwood School, how would they have known? How would they have known? It wasn't in multiple languages. There wasn't anything that we could do. So I said to my class, what would you like done? Basketball, water fountain, and swings. How many of our students are in wheelchairs who require outside time? They need it for their PT. We love our students. I'm not here for my children. My children at Forestdale, they get green grass there. I'm here for my kids that I see every day more than my own children at home. The kids here at Salemwood count, and it is about time that everyone takes share of our students here. Whether it's crumb rubber, whether we get basketball courts that I don't see there, it's about time that people ask the children who go to school here and their parents. Yes.
Glenn Marullo, I think you'd be very surprised about how many athletes would actually prefer grass. That's just a statement. We've all been there. But I have a question for Mr. O'Neill and maybe some other people. I was wondering how much effort was put in, since you were a child, say, into improving this field, and how much money and concentration was done over the years. You don't know? Does anybody know? Do you? No, I mean, are there any major drainage, have those concerns been seriously addressed?
Well, I've been with the city for 26 years.
Yeah.
And I can tell you the drainage has always been a.
Yeah, I know, but it has,
And in saying,
Yeah.
it's like look at a day like today,
Yeah.
where it rains, I can tell you that this field will not be playable for the next couple of days anyway. So in my experience with turf fields and use of fields and getting sports activities playing, in my personal opinion, turf is the way to go to get these children of the community on the field.
but my question was, I mean,
I can't tell you
I
exactly
know what
how
you're
much
saying.
that I can't.
Nobody knows, so probably hasn't been seriously the drainage. I mean, there are pipes coming from Salem Street that end up somehow under the field, and I don't know if they cracked over the years. I don't know if they go directly into that West Branch Brook, Saugus Branch Brook. To me, it would seem, no matter what is done, that other water that's up in that paved area should be separated out and brought to the West Branch Brook, which leads to another question: does that culvert have the capacity to receive extra water? So, I mean, we have, I don't know if there's any engineers here from the city or anything.
Well, Steve's not going to talk.
I guess the only thing that
You know what I'm saying? In other words, we're going into a quantum leap without trying other solutions first.
the only only thing that I can speak to specifically that I have some knowledge of, in 1998 or 99, when the school was built, the field was designed with drainage improvements and constructed.
Okay,
So that would have been the late 90s. when that
yeah,
happened. I do know that there had been efforts made where they did some deep time aeration and overseed it with sand to basically try to create wick drains. Again, that was an effort that was made to try to address some of the ponding water, and that didn't result in any significant improvement.
but it has a lot to do with the urban fill,
Yes.
which really doesn't have much of a separation
It's
from the grass. In some places, you say 1 inch.
it's zero.
And, yeah, so, I know in Callahan Park, there was, you know, the huge diaphragm when they used to make Coke there, and they put down a large plastic fabric underneath. Do you know that?
I
Yeah.
was the consultant that
Okay,
worked on
so,
the
I mean, is that something that can be done in addition over the urban fill as well?
That will be an element of the project when the urban fill is excavated to the required depth, whether it's 15 inches for synthetic turf surface or 3 feet for natural grass surface. First thing that goes down is the warning, that's a warning barrier, the orange fence. So really, that's another way to alert a person who may be excavating in the field that time out. That barrier serves no function from the perspective of a drainage component. It's strictly a warning barrier to alert a person excavating in the field that they're about to break the barrier and they're into a material that's potentially harmful.
Well, again, you know, as I say, this is a multi-million-dollar project. And I don't know if the natural turf with maybe additional addressing of the field itself, drainage, and then the other drainage that's on the street. If that could bypass the field, which I know in heavy rains, it must be a major contributor to the water that eventually gets onto the field.
I can address your question on drainage.
Yeah.
I don't have the drain plans on all, but I remember the catch basins on Salem Street. They're collected and then it's conveyed through closed pipes with the direct connection to the flood control conduit. So that takes the drainage that comes off of Salem Street and goes to the flood control conduit. There's drainage at the end in section of L Street, Placehead Road. It's collected with catch basins and pipe, and that is piped directly to the conduit. There is roof drainage and area drainage that come off of the school, in the plaza on the back of the school, as well as the parking lot. That's collected, again, through either basins or roof drains. It's collected and it's conveyed by closed pipes from where it's collected to the wetland. And then from the wetland, there's outlets from the wetland that connect directly to the flood control conduit. I surmise, I wasn't involved in the school project myself. The existing drainage on Salem Street, L Street, Placehead, was there prior to the school construction. That was there before, and that's what remains there today. The drainage from the school and the site improvements associated with the school, the drainage system was designed in those pipes, the collection system, and the wetland that was created were integral components that were designed by the consultant with the school project to deal with the drainage from the site.
I guess I'm allowed only one question. But is the field worse now since the school was built?
Frankly, I'm gonna recall back to my
Yeah.
younger years.
It was always a problem.
There's more green there, I wouldn't call it grass. There's a lot of weeds. When I was a kid,
Hey, thank you for your answers.
when I was a kid, I remember that park being dirt, glass, rocks, bricks coming up from the surface. It was tough. Not unlike many of the facilities in the city. Unfortunately, the sad fact of the matter is that my fear, going with this natural grass field, it will be a short order before the field reverts back to the condition that you see it currently in. It's just a challenge to maintain a good, healthy turf grass on that site, given the low-lying conditions, the drainage issues, the use that it gets, the maintenance practices that are required, the knowledge and the resources necessary to care properly for a natural grass field. When you deal with a natural grass field, oftentimes what you do is you take the field offline for a season to allow the natural grass to be reseeded, and you allow the field to
Rest.
rest.
Yeah.
Or, if space allows, you rotate the fields 90 degrees, especially the rectangular fields, so that your goal-out areas alternate, so you can let them rest. The stark reality is, this field, we're putting 10 pounds of field in a 10-pound bag. We're not overbuilding it, but it just is not the land available to do some of the things that are components to good athletic turf management.
Most of these artificial turfs have sort of a gutter system surrounding the perimeter. And so that would be part of,
Oh yeah, this field will have, it'll actually have a system of under drainage, usually spaced 25 to 30 feet on center in that stone layer. So the field will be drained fully. So you're gonna get a lot of vertical drainage. It'll get into the stone, into the pipes, and then convey to the well. I've heard people, Pat, correct me if I'm saying anything wrong, I've heard statistics that will say the infill system with the turf, the choker stone, and the drainage layer with the underdrains can drain upwards of 20 inches per hour to evacuate that level of intensity of rain away from the field. That's why I feel very strongly, under the conditions, that this type of system is the best fit for this site.
and does the price of this project, yeah, but can that brook that's culverted, can that receive all this extra?
We will, right now, the drainage system will control pre-development or post-development runoff to pre-development rates. So the system that we will design for site drainage will result in no net increase to the flood control costs.
Gary? Oh, actually, I'm
Thank you.
sorry, I'm not
Thank
sure
you.
which one of you was first, but stop here and then go to Gary.
So my question is, I work for state government and,
Introduce yourself, please.
oh, I'm sorry, Ann Skiro. I work for state government, and before we start a major capital improvement like this, we usually do something called a study. Okay, I'm sure you're familiar with the concept. So my question is, did you do a real study to weigh the pros and cons of going forward with natural turf and going forward with the infill that you're talking about here? And also, to piggyback on this gentleman's question, did you do a real investigation of the existing drainage system to help, because you had a problem that you needed to solve? So, number one, were the existing conditions fully investigated? As he said, some of the piping that's there now supporting the drainage that you say is 20 or 40 or 50 years old could be compromised, and maybe there's a problem there. So that's my question. Did you do a full analysis of all of the options and the existing conditions? Do you have cost estimates that go along with it? Did you put together what the full design would be for a natural turf? And has this been presented and shared with people before the decision is made?
I'll address a couple things. Ann is someone who's worked both at the state and the local level. The level of rigor that can happen at a local level, because we don't have as much resources, doesn't always happen in the same way as you do as a state, to be honest. But, you know, when I was elected, and I worked to make sure that we did do that analysis of a grass field versus a turf field, that we had that basic thing. I mean, I can't say that we did all the drainage analysis, but I'm sure, I mean, Steve, working more broadly in the city on all our street projects and has had a long knowledge. So, like I say, we're doing the due diligence as we typically do in our city. You know, like I say, we don't quite do that level of extent. I mean, I think Debbie from the MRA, I mean, you know, we just don't have the resources. I mean, one of the challenges here, you have a chicken and egg thing. It costs tens of thousands of dollars to do, you know, or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm sure you know how much it costs. I mean, here we have a couple $1 million project, but we've just gotten the first $75,000 to go ahead. So we, you know, we are trying to do it with very little resources, and it's not, you know.
It can be inexpensive though to video drain lines, that's not a big cost item.
Our city engineer isn't here right now, so I
yeah.
don't know what's been done, so, but it's,
Yeah,
I'm good for my, okay.
Right now, I gotta step back and just to remind people where we are in this process. We are at what I would consider to be a pre-schematic level of project
But you've made a
development.
decision on a direction.
Yes,
Yeah.
the city
Yeah.
has made a decision.
But not based on, in my mind, really fully investigating, from what I'm hearing today, fully investigating the existing conditions to try to solve the problem. It seems like you've kind of made a decision, we're gonna go this way. That's just I'm just seeing it.
I respect your perspective.
Yeah.
Just so you're aware, no, we have not televised drain pipes. We haven't even begun our in-depth investigations that we would do as part of the effort to support the design of the project going forward. What we have done, if we step back and we take an operating premise that the existing site drainage system will be reused, that to get a baseline. We have then compared the synthetic turf option to a sand-based natural grass field option. And when we looked at the two options, we presented our, again, schematic level, budgetary level cost estimates for both programs. Based on that input, the city has elected to advance the synthetic turf option. And I think, I can't necessarily speak for the city, but I do believe that decision is founded in, again, I'm gonna keep it back.
Well, what was the cost differential?
The
Can you
cost
share that?
differential was roughly about $450,000, more expensive for a natural grass field.
And was that just based on the extra foot and a half of excavation?
Largely, yep.
Okay.
So, like I say, I mean, that cost, I mean, certainly it is more expensive because of that level of excavation, but I think, you know, in going to the meetings, and I know Bob not going to be here, what really, you know, for me, one of the key things is, you know, having worked, you know, in various cities with, you know, from project conception to maintenance, I always realize it's important to work with your DPW to make sure you create a facility that they're confident they can maintain. And I think that was a key thing, is that even if we went ahead with a natural grass field, there was not the level of confidence that we could consistently maintain it. And also some of my experience of working in Gloucester, where they have, you know, some beautiful grass fields, but they also have some low-lying fields that were very hard to keep the grass going. And I think that's the kind of thing of just hearing, you know, from the experts, hearing from our DPW director, you know, he's had 26 years of experience, that there was a really lack of confidence that we could maintain a high-quality field in a low-lying area.
But it could be built and the drainage could be fixed to support a grass, but you're saying exactly what we have now, no.
Yeah, I say you could build that, but whether you have the confidence that as a city, like I say, it's finding the fit, that you can go out there and build that, but it may not last the, you know, the years we want. And I think that's, like I say, in Gloucester, they had a very low-lying field. They would go out and resod it every 3 years, and that's because the sod was problematic.
What last question, what's the cost to replace the infill and the carpet every 15 years?
For 7 years.
So what is that? I mean, I know.
Is it 7 years or 15 years?
What's the warranty on it? So it's 400,000 to replace it in 15 or 7 years? What's the warranty like?
Warranty is 8.
8 years.
Yeah, and the fields that we've done in the city, in other places, have lasted 10, I've been 12.
And what's the cost of
You're on
resodding?
13 years at Maplewood Park right now. And I was, you know, student, but people go down there and check it out. It's in great shape compared to any of our natural ones. And to Steve Winslow's point, the city, when Bob Knox started in the DPW, had twice as many people in the DPW. That's a major reason why the city, unfortunately, cannot keep up with the fields as natural grass. They just don't have the manpower, and that's not going to change.
But you gotta come up with the 450 to replace it, so you have more manpower.
But you're gonna be doing it all.
Excuse me, folks. I'm gonna try to keep sure if we can to one question, and just we'll go around the room, back to everybody. And Carrie Percival has been waiting very patiently. Carrie.
Oh, I've been listening. I'm very interested to hear what everyone has to say. My name's Carrie Percival. I live up this street. This field is the closest one to my home, so me and my kids fly kites there. It's just our closest neighborhood park. I'm trained as a science teacher. I taught middle school science. And I have a few questions. I just have another statement that I think that this field has roles and uses that are not being spoken of here that are very important also. But I just have a couple questions first. So this plan with a kind of athletic focus to make this field into a highly functional athletic field that can support a lot of games off, is that's kind of the thrust of it?
Yeah,
It doesn't.
I mean, this has been an athletic field since I've been in Malden for 30 years, and since Steve, for it's been an athletic field. So we're really trying to make sure that we have a good athletic field. So I mean, I think this is, in fact, a city thing. I mean, I know we want to have something with the school. I mean, one of the challenges here is that, I know there's some people have raised, like, why don't we do something like this at Dever Park? Well, Dever Park doesn't have 1,200 students next to it that would use it, for 8 hours a day. And then we also have lighting here, so there's a lot more users here. So it's always been an athletic field, and it has a lot of immediate users. So that's one reason for that focus. So, and like I say, that I think Councilor Murphy's talked about looking at some of the other peripheral things of looking at playground space and other type of things. But this has been an athletic field. It's in poor condition, and that's been the focus of of what we can do to have a better athletic field.
Right.
So that's,
I would like to just say that I do agree with the teachers that have spoken up and saying that it doesn't seem like the school community has been part of the decision-making of the use of this field. I feel like people probably have good intentions of thinking, the city has good intentions about thinking about the use of this field, but maybe in exclusion of the school community. And I feel strongly, having been a teacher myself and having kids in the neighborhood, that it's very important to maybe take a step back and maybe reform this project with more inclusion of the teachers and the parents in the school, because they have the the decision to make Roosevelt Park into a school in the 90s was a big decision. And I know I don't blame anyone here who's, a little bit sad that this isn't just still a whole park. I get that. I totally get that. But now that it is a school and there are 1,200 children here every day, all day, and there might be parents that have thoughts, there might be other types of uses that are really important for this space, for the needs of these city children, urban children, among the most needy in the state, who don't, might not be in a soccer program, but who might come here every day. I think it might be really important to take a step back and think about including more voices.
Thank you. So I'm sorry I didn't see your hand. I just wanted to introduce Charlie Conifrey. He's the AD director for actually all of the schools.
Yes.
So,
Well, thank you for everyone coming out tonight. Obviously, there's some strong feelings on both sides, for and against. Just my role here in the city for the public schools from K to 12 is 6,800 students. Every single one of those students goes through a physical education class, and they take phys ed all the way through up, K through 12. I commend Ms. Sullivan, I commend, I'm sorry, Penny. I commend Penny. The passion that comes out of you and your love and want for the teachers it's heartwarming and heartbreaking at the same time. I feel your pain. I think some of the issues aren't so much just about the turf field. I think the voices or not being heard from the city are separate issues, and I'm with you. I want a basketball court. I played basketball for Malden. I love basketball. It's my favorite sport. I've talked to the kids in phys ed K to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12. I grew up on 19 Wade Street. I played on this field when this gentleman said there was grass, brick. I played on it. We loved it. I loved playing on this field. But to go to your point, it's not just an athletic field for athletic use, for rental, for the Malden Recreation Department. It's for the 1,200 students here at the Salemwood School to be used on a daily basis for a phys ed class. We have class sizes of 35, sometimes 40 kids jammed in a huge field house, but we have two teachers, K to 4, teaching on one end. There's 70 kids on one side. If we had a field that we could go out and actually use 9, 10, even 11 months, as this gentleman stated, you could pretty much play on a turf field safely, almost year-round. It opens up the door immensely for not just the Salemwood students, the 1,200 students here, but it opens up the door for the department that I lead at the athletic department and our 1,000 kids that are playing year-round. Malden Papuana that would love to have field space, the Malden Youth Soccer. It would alleviate some stress on the grass fields that we have, that we want to keep, and we can start moving things around. But going back to Ms. Sullivan, honestly, the passion that comes out of you is, I've talked briefly with Ms. Van. We've talked about handicapped, ADA accessible playgrounds. We have plans at the BB. There are discussions at the other schools, and Salemwood is included, because our parks are not all ADA compliant, and they have to be, because at the end of the day, who is this for? It's for our students. It's not for us. Yeah, we would love to see this, but we want to see all of these kids have the best opportunity that they can. Thank you.
I live in this neighborhood for my entire life. I see many of my colleagues from high school here that spent a lot of time in Malden. And I must admit, my recollection of this field growing up with my sister and my neighbor, when the fire department would flood this field, and we would skate on it every year. The thought of putting an artificial turf made up of ground-up ice with me is very concerning. I know there's questions surrounding the safety of this with young children. Our students at this school range in age from 5 to 15. Our students are in their early stages of development. Our students at this Salemwood will be exposed to this artificial turf for 9 years. Although you, Mr. O'Neill, say that there will be 1,200 students to be here all the time to access the field, my concern is that we have more than 1,200 students here every year that will be on that field. Our students go to recess at least 100 to 120 days a year. Believe it or not, out of the 180 days, our children do go when it's snowing. And we go for 30 minutes. The only school in Malden that goes for 30 minutes. These students live in the area and will be exposed to this questionable safe area on weekends and during the summer. They'll play games on it, they'll run, they'll still dig for ants and bugs on that field. Young children by nature are very curious, And when they want to explore the nature that they're in, they want to touch it, they want to feel it, and sometimes they want to taste it. And if you ever took a child to the beach, you'd realize that that's the curiosity that's natural in them. The thought that these students, our students, my students, might be exposed to a field that could possibly make them sick worries me to my core. I think about other things that maybe people have been exposed to when there wasn't enough research out there. They say that hindsight is 20/20. Let's not let this be one of those times. Let's not look back in 10 years from now and decide that we exposed more than 12,000 students for approximately 500 hours during their school experience alone that could make them sick. That does not include the additional hours that these students are playing organized sports or having fun on this field. Thank you for giving me the time.
Back to the room, Julia Sina.
Hi, I'm Julia Arcino. I'm the chair of the Malden CPC. So I just want to first off thank everyone and Councilor Murphy for doing this meeting. We've had a couple of public hearings. We've had almost 40 CPC meetings. I know many of you have been there. My old career was actually be a senior project manager, and I would implement software globally. And every time you do a complicated project like this, you have disparate positions. So this actually is normal. No, probably doesn't feel normal. My understanding of where we are in this project is we're starting on the design phase. We're at the funding. So what we've done on the CPC is we received an application from the MRA with support from another number of groups. And what we started doing is doing the funding. So what we're looking at right now is saying this park needs to be rehabilitated. One of you have folks raise your hand? Because anytime I've asked this question, should this park be rehabilitated? Nobody says no. So should this park be rehabilitated? So these folks are now saying no. You're saying no?
Yeah.
It should be, okay, great. So from my perspective, as the chair of the CPC, we are at the funding part. So the funding part is, we're gonna put money for this park to be rehabilitated, and I call it the design phase. I know Steve calls it something else. And this is the time to kind of get your voices heard and talk about things. But the money is going to be there to rehabilitate the park. The CPC funding goes for netting, it goes for fencing, it goes for dugouts, baby benches. It goes for sort of the capitalized project piece. So I just want to make sure that that's clear. And then there's never been an intention to ever leave anyone from the community out of this process. So it's, me personally, I've heard it loud and clear. I truly appreciate Ms. Sullivan's been to 4, 5 meetings, and I appreciate her position.
And Julie, just a question for you. This is the biggest investment that the CPC has approved.
So far, yes.
So this is the city, your city, wanting to invest in this park and field next to Salemwood School. So this is the biggest commitment we're looking at.
This is the first year, so we're doing 8 projects, and this is the biggest of the 8 projects.
I think Jay, Sandy, did you speak already? No. Okay, good. So Jay, Tara, Sandy.
So I'm a parent, and
She went already.
yeah, I just want to say something really
She
quick.
went
I'm
already.
sorry.
Let's stick by the rules. Let's stick to the rules.
Well, she called on me, so I,
And I also gave a lot of leeway to some people. I had actually said one question, and I gave a lot of leeway to people who had multiple questions. So I just pointed to her, let's just do this, Jake, do it quickly, then we'll go Tara, then we'll go Sandy.
thank you. I'm a parent, and I grew up here in Malden. And when I grew up here in Malden, we had a basketball court on Ferry Way. And basketball court disappeared, park went in, school went in. There's a basketball court down in Newland. I don't see kids out there. Kids are inside playing on video games. My son's sitting right here on YouTube. That's what my son does. If I don't put him in a sport, my son's on YouTube. My son's playing a video game. I choose as a parent to put him in a sport. I know there's a lot of parents that can't afford to do that. There's a lot of parents that actually put their child in a sport and say, I need a waiver, I need help putting them in a sport. As a parent, I'm choosing that. And there's a lot of parents that don't do that. There's a lot of parents that put their kids in an after-school program. And as a teacher, I understand you guys do a lot. And I appreciate you guys and what you guys do. My daughter came to Salemwood. I know what you guys do, and I know the effort you guys put in. But you guys are not understanding that it's our prerogative, what we want for our kids. And I don't see parents here.
Because nothing was notified.
They weren't notified.
But okay,
How are they
parents,
supposed to know about these?
okay, so
Parents
the city
told them.
didn't notify, but I'm asking as a parent, I would have appreciated my child's teacher saying, by the way, this is happening.
They don't know. Are we allowed to do that?
Why not? Why not?
70% of our kids do not speak English. They would have had to translate everything. They should have sent out a Connect Ed. They should have given us forms to send home. Or that nothing
For
sent
weeks,
out.
for weeks.
Nothing.
So,
Where there's a way, there's always a will.
I will take the hit for that one. I set this up as a Ward 5 meeting, and I did it exactly the way that I do Ward 5 meetings. And I know that the school knew about that we were having the meeting. I did not think to contact all of the parents of the school. I assumed that word would filter out to the school community, as it seems to have filtered out through all the sports organizations and everyone else, on Facebook, et cetera, so.
Teachers didn't know.
Huh?
Teachers didn't know. I live in Ward 5, that's all I know, but the teachers did not.
I found out.
So that's why parents don't know.
Anyway, okay, Tara.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for their time, and I was also a college athlete, and I've played on both services. I have kids in Malden youth sports, and I also have kids in the public schools. I feel like a part of this feels like, and maybe I'm not involved enough, I don't think that's true, but it doesn't feel like all of the constituents have been represented, and I just wish that would be, like, maybe if that could be shown as how, because it really will affect kids here. I mean, I just wish people would, so I just would like to know how that will get put in, I guess. And I'm not saying I'm for grass, but I understand it needs to be rebuilt. I'm not saying anything about that. I appreciate everyone's time.
Sandy?
Yeah, I was just wondering, how is it funded?
How is CPC funded? How does this project get funded? I might have missed it when I came in. So we passed it.
We do it, I do it all the time.
Okay. So it was 3 years ago, 3 years ago. Malden passed the CPA.
Oh, I think she's asking more about the funding. So it's coming from the CPA, the private, CPC funding, which is the 1% real estate tax that we all voted on a couple of years ago, two years ago. Okay. It's also coming from a private donation, private fund, and a portion of it's coming from the city budget.
What part of the budget does it come from?
And it just, the budget, I mean, we're putting the budget together now. There's a couple of $100,000 or $150,000. $150,000 should come from the city budget, I believe, somewhere thereabouts. So that's how it's being funded.
So 1% from our taxes, do we ever need to make a decision where that money can go?
Do you make a decision where CPA money goes? So this
1%
general
that you
fund.
guys are collecting from us, our taxes,
Yes.
is there ever a way for any of us to make a decision on where that money can go?
Yes. So we have, again, we've had almost 40 meetings. So we're the Community Preservation Committee. We meet monthly. We have a meeting every 2 weeks. We put together a plan. We get community input. We have surveys.
Can I add one thing? You have to be specific though. It can't go by the year. There's only certain areas the money can go.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yes. The money can't go everywhere. The money has to go in certain buckets based on the state.
Like
Open space, so we can go for open space projects, historical preservation, and affordable housing.
Okay.
So
what you do is you do a pre-application, ends up being an application, we review them, we make sure it meets the CPA state law, we have to make sure it's a pre-application, that it's going to benefit the state.
How long has this 1% been going on? I don't really,
3 years.
3 years. So you guys must have a big chunk of change in the bank.
It's $2.2 million.
$2.2 million. Is there a way for you guys to take a portion of that and do a handicap park?
So-
ASAP, not like in 3 years. I work at the ELC.
I would love to see pre-applications.
Well, you can't afford it. That's what,
No, no,
I worked in a multi-handicap classroom for 8 years. Kids in wheelchairs.
They take applications, somebody has to bring an application. So somebody has to put it together. So Julie's, CPC, they'll just receive the application and vote on whether to fund it. So somebody has to put that
Yes,
together.
that's what it is.
It's due June 15th, so don't waste time.
Well, no, I'm not gonna do it. I thought it would be up to the principal, but
We can't fund anything on school property, it has to be school property.
And just for clarification, just getting a little bit off topic here, but we just did a handicap accessible park down in Forest Hill Park through SEEP, Community Development Block Grant money. So that is available to do some ADA requirements for parks. We also just put in sensory equipment at the Forest Hill School for, through another community development block grant that I wrote. Both of those I had written. I've spoken with Principal Ian about starting to work with the Salemwood School on the top lot here so that we can add some elements there for some of the children in the school. Sandy, just in answer to your question, the problem with the Early Learning Center top lot, because I have looked into this, is the fact that it's locked. Okay, so it's community development. CPC can't fund things on school property. CDBG can fund things, okay? However, it has to be open to the general public. And the top lot of the ELC is closed to the general public, so it falls out of that area of trying to make grant funding. So I have, for previous conversations that we've had, I
What
actually
does it
did
fall
look
under?
at it.
Who do you get in contact for that?
For what?
To get a handicapped accessible, even just a piece of equipment at ELC?
That would be the superintendent's office.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Okay.
Should I talk to this wall?
Ms. Hayes, Karen?
Yes, hi, Karen Hughes. I just want to thank you also, this is a tremendous amount of information, and I love what the teachers here said, I appreciate that too. I'm here, so I coach softball, my husband's coached soccer, my kids are athletes, I was an athlete, so I truly appreciate, and she played cheerleading, so I truly appreciate the amount of space, that we need that for our kids, but my concern, the reason why I'm here is the Salemwood School kids, and I think it was about the reaching out to try and contact, because those are the kids who are going to be spending the most time here. So that's why I came here to see if that had been done, because they are, the demographics show here, they're lower income, ELL, kids who don't speak English. So I just want to be sure that their voices are heard too, and not just the sports. Again, I'm sports, I appreciate it, but the Salemwood School kids are the ones who are going to be on here all the time. So just as long as they have, and they might want it. It's just that if they have the opportunity to hear what we just heard and be able to chime in, because there are total benefits for turf, and also I would prefer, like everybody else, grass. But I had a couple of questions on that, and I'm sorry I came in a little late, so you might have already said this, but was there any talk about splitting it? Could you do half turf in a basketball court, or do anything like that instead of the whole thing? Maybe like as a compromise, that was one, and the other was building it up, by adding soil in on top and redoing the drainage that way.
I know, I'm actually looking through all of this, so yes, I'll let Steve explain it. Not tonight, but we've had many conversations about what happens when you go up.
Yeah.
No.
So to your first question in terms of the program that the city expressed to us that they wanted for this facility was to mimic the existing program. 2 softball diamonds with the rectangular, the idea. So that kind of preempts the ability to split it, half grass, half synthetic turf, or vice versa. When you look just simply at the footprint of the facility, there's no extra room. As I said earlier, it's 10 pounds of this program in a 10-pound bag. So to be able to fit a basketball court, that would remove a softball field from the program, and it would remove the rectangular field over in order to accommodate a basketball court on the project. So that's in response to the program. And then in response to your question about can we raise the grade of the site, we could. Ideally, what we want to do in a perfect world would balance the grading of the site with the separation that we need. The obstacle to that on this site is because it's in floodplain. When you raise the grade of the field, you displace flood storage. And by the state regulations, if you displace flood storage, you have to create compensatory storage. The site doesn't have any space on it to allow for compensatory storage. So therefore, the grading of this site has to be almost at or about the existing grade of the field.
Thank you. But could it be done if it was split, like if there was a different, raise some of it and have like a softball? And I know this, I'm sure this has already been done. I think, what did you say, you were in schematics? Or,
Pre-schematic.
Okay, so maybe it can. But it would just be, would it be more money?
It would be infeasible, because if you raise half of the site, that'll have to
And then
be well, you've got the rectangular field and have step in.
Yes.
So you couldn't bring half up and keep the other half. And even if you raised a portion of the site, you would still have to provide compensatory storage. That amount of flood storage is displaced by however much, whatever the volume is, however high you raise it over later, you have to have compensatory storage.
Now, I saw both Ryan and
Yeah, so I have a lot of questions, but I'll just try to keep it down to one. I'm John Sayers. Yeah. So yeah. So where to start? There's in 1989, Massachusetts passed the Toxins Use Reduction Act, and from that, the Toxins Use Reduction Institute was established, and it's in Massachusetts, and it's a policy center. So when I hear people say that there are conclusions, people say I'm only a lay person, I don't know what conclusions to draw. There's all this research all over the place, and you don't know how to prioritize it and put it all together. Well, there's a policy center, and their position is that real grass is safer. So when I hear things about risk reduction, in my mind, the first thing I would say is real grass is safer, and I'm not hearing that. And I've only been to 2 meetings. I came very late in the game, and the discussion hasn't changed from the initial proposal. So when I hear all this stuff about feedback, I don't hear anything being considered. So I'm just wondering which person involved in this decision-making process considers themselves an authority to the Toxins Use Reduction Institute in Massachusetts. I guess that's the question.
Yeah, so this question was about at UMass Lowell, there's a toxic use reduction approach. And so I know when, I worked at Mass Department of Environmental Protection, one of the questions was we spent, starting in the 1980s, we took, or actually the 1970s, we took toxic chemicals out of the air and the water and eventually the land. And what do we do? The approach became, let's try to minimize the use of those so we don't even get them on that. So that's sort of the approach. And so certainly that's an approach towards just these type of things. And I think one of the things I point out is that we are looking, you can look at the synthetic turf with a natural infill as a toxic use reduction approach. So it is one of those things. And as we know, as we've heard, even a natural grass field may have some chemicals, maybe they're organic or not. Those chemicals, the fertilizers will wash into the Saugus Branch culvert and into the Malden River. So there's not necessarily a grass field requires intervention to stay as a grass field. So there's things there. So I think it is, it's an approach to toxic use. You still want to achieve the end that you want. I mean, the ultimate toxic use reduction is to do nothing. So here the challenge is how do we achieve the program and end up with a facility that is usable and meets the needs, and then make the risks appropriate. So that's kind of what we have to find. And I think what we hear is that the challenge with the grass field is that it may not meet our needs. We may spend over $2 million and 3 years from now end up with a grass field that's pretty muddy like we have now. So I think that's the question, and you have that first question of what you're trying to achieve, and then you try to reduce toxics in that type.
With all due respect, can you pass the microphone to the authority of the toxic use reduction?
I honestly, I don't know what.
She's the toxic.
You want the toxicologist?
So also, thank you. Yes.
I just, your voice like.
So you're essentially saying their approach is to not have any,
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just asking a very simple question. Who considers themselves an authority to the Toxins Use Reduction Institute that has set policy in Massachusetts that real grass is a safer alternative?
Right.
That's the question. Either you answer it or not. I'm trying to be brief on time so everyone else has a chance to speak.
That's their opinion, but.
Are you an authority? That's all I want. I'm just not looking for platitudes here. I have over $100,000 in debt in medical training. If I got my board exams finished in Rhode Island, I would be a doctor. I value this institute for everything it's worth, and for setting policy. We can't have people just passing off, being cynical, saying, well, there's pesticides. You think these people haven't considered the pesticides when they put out their position? Do you, Mr.
I just, like you say, I don't know if you were here at the first part of the meeting, what I had to say was that what we're trying to look at here is what approach in terms of the field works best for this situation. And so there's a challenge of, even if you do the thing that has the least toxics, it may not work as a field here. So
no, but the message you're sending is mixed. When you say, well, there's pesticides, that tells me you don't understand all of the information that's available. I have access to over 100 pages of peer-reviewed literature. This is just a summary. It's 28 pages, but I have hundreds of pages of peer-reviewed material. And it's not just about cancer. Just the coloring agents, there are dyes. Food companies are taking colored dyes from their foods because it causes psychological and behavioral problems. What makes this grass green? Just that. So once you go past 8 years of UV protection and the limited warranty, the amount of chemicals being released increases substantially. These chemicals, these products, they aren't regulated. Up until 2001, there were significant amounts of lead in these things, and it was found all the way through 2008. We don't know where these tire rubber came from. We're worried about urban fill, and we do not, but we're not worried about putting, what is this urban fill? There's tire rubber in this urban fill. Why should we be worried about that when we're putting a plastic carpet and crumb rubber right on top? All these chemicals you're concerned about are in the product you're going to purchase.
So what I have to say is that those same chemicals are in the tires that's in your car. And we live in a society.
Don't be cynical.
No, I'm not being cynical. I'm saying we live in a techno-agrarian society where it is run in part because we rely on chemicals. I'm a chemical engineer, so we create. And when you say unregulated, the system we have is a chemical company can create a chemical and put it out there. And unlike the medical field, in the medical field, you have to prove something that's safe and effective. And in our industrial society, you can put that thing out there. So that's the dilemma we have as public officials. These chemicals are out there. No one has pre-screened them. And so it's how you base the risk. So that's what toxicologists work.
I have a neighbor at Salem Towers who's chemically sensitive. She won't even be able to use it just to smell.
John, I think we've heard your concerns. I do have, I know Jim Cahill's down there, but Brian did have his hand up first. Brian, if you could be concise, please. We wanted to be out of here at 8 o'clock. I don't want to cut it short, but we do really need to be out of here by 8:30. Okay?
Can I stand up? This table's really not my size.
Yes, you can.
So look, quick.
Introduce yourself, please, sir.
I'm Brian DeLacy. I'm a resident. My kids played on this field. they weren't students here, so people from elsewhere in Malden play on this field. And I'm concerned. I'm concerned, number one, about the health and safety of the kids who are here today. K through 8, 12,000 people over the next 10 years. This is a huge health concern that people need to be aware of. I'm opposed to it. You know I'm opposed to artificial turf. I've written to city officials in the room. I respect greatly people on both sides of this argument. My kids grew up, they're pretty good athletes. They didn't play on any of this stuff, more or less, except for maybe, occasionally. And so I respect the people. I'm shocked at how few parents are here. These kids don't have their own voices. I'm really proud of people who do speak on behalf of these kids who are here. So look, just a couple of things. And we got to level with each other, right? You said there were 2 people, 2 soccer players who were diagnosed with cancer. This was one coach. She identified 2 people on her teams who are goaltenders. If your kids play soccer on turf fields, don't let them be the goalies, because they're the ones who have most impact on the turf, who are going to be inhaling this stuff. You also mentioned the ESPN Turf Wars video that was from several years ago. Look at it. It's 15 minutes long. It's great stuff. Look real closely, and you'll see the guy who is refilling the turf area who has a hazmat mask on. So if you want to gear up your soccer kids when they go play with hazmat masks, I'd encourage you to do so. Another thing, I was at the CPC meeting a couple of nights ago. I asked the question, what's the difference in surface level temperature between grass and turf? I'm not going to ask that question because that's my one question, and then you're going to sit me down. The answer I was given on Tuesday was 10 degrees, give or take. Look, you can go out to Amazon, you can buy one of these guns for $50, and you can go test it. The report that John just referred to says 32 to 42 degrees difference in surface level temperature. Your kids are going to be sliding on this stuff. Your kids are going to be playing on this stuff. And when my kid was playing softball, by the way, those are dirt softball fields. Those aren't grass fertilizer fields. Those are dirt. So there's at least, I would say, 10%. The other I will ask this question, and then I'll shut up and sit down. First of all, I do think our kids are worth the $500,000 for grass. I like grass. I've grown up on grass. I've seen grass maintained at large scale. It's doable. Mr. Knox can do it. People will help him do it, and the city will get it done. $500,000 is absolutely nothing, okay? So here's the question. How many rubber tires you think go into a football field? Not 4 on your car, 2 on your motorcycle, 16 on your tractor trailer. How many? 100 on the highway? 500 maybe? 1,000 maybe? 40,000 tires go into a typical football-sized field. And then they refill it. And your other point about it's locked in, it's not locked in. Look at this report, and what you'll see is a simple little kid kicking a soccer ball, and these things are spraying up. The person who made the observation about essentially how these things get beat down to a point where they essentially vaporize over years. So, hey, make the most out of it for the next 5 years, but don't let your kid be in on 7, 8, 9, and 10 years because they're going to be most exposed. I think the money is worth it. Again, I thought Karen's points about could you do something that's that's kind of a split field. I think that would. It's wonderful what people are doing to upgrade this field. The city deserves it. The kids deserve it. My kids played on it years ago. But we didn't have the bricks and the stones and the adults play on this stuff. I know somebody. They got a rule when they play on turf: no sliding. Okay. Why is that rule there? It's because it's not. At least some people think it's not healthy. So I know people here who have done good things for the community, Steve, and I really appreciate that. But obviously, I'm not in favor of turf. Thank you.
I want to say, yeah, I do. I just want to say thank you for that. I just want to say I was a college goalie. I still play goalie in soccer. I have no issue being honest. I have no issue sliding. There's 2 goalies that had cancer, had lymphoma, which is not something that comes from environmental contact. So
just a follow-up question. How many people has she? Amy Griffin is her name. I'm sure we're talking about soccer.
She found many.
Many. How many? Over 200, maybe. I mean, it's not like 2.
Yeah, as a result, the Washington State Department of Health did a study on soccer fields. Their conclusion concluded that the number of cancer cases among soccer players is less than expected based on the rates of cancer among Washington residents of the same ages.
My only point is, when you say two, don't undermine
That's
the
what started.
integrity of the people. Give them the facts. You obviously had the research, start with the research. They got that research going from her population of people who came to her. The other thing is, all of these things are very recent studies, like within the past couple of years. It took a while for people to figure out cigarettes and a lot of other things. Thank you.
Mr. Cahill?
Hi, I'm Peter Cahill. I've been with Malden across for 20 years. We've had kids from kindergarten to the 8th grade playing lacrosse for the last 20 years. And we have not had one significant injury from any of those children in the last 20 years. Not one. Safe service. I mean, I don't know about the other stuff we're talking about. But as far as, broken legs, broken arms, lacrosse is a very tough sport. Kids are falling down, kids are getting up. Not one significant injury. I personally don't think that if you start putting, and we need another lacrosse field for the kids because we don't have enough. Right now we have 5 teams. We have a girls program, a boys program. We don't have enough practice time. Of course, we can't play on grass fields because they're not line fields. So we've been playing at Malden Catholic for the last 20 years. And in my opinion, if you put a grass field here, and then you put soccer, you put lacrosse, you put girls softball, you put the kids playing on it, which is great. I hope they do play on it. Is it going to stand up to all that stuff with the rain? And then, you've got soccer games, softball games, football. This will hold up. This will let the kids, give the kids in our city the ability to play 9 months a year. And I think that's the important thing. That's all I have to say.
That observation is coming from the guy who maintains the nicest grass in the city. But the fact of the matter is, it only makes sense with all of the preconditions. Everybody would like to have grass. It's just not feasible in this city. You can't keep it up. The amount of wear and tear of the people that use it. I mean, if it rains, you can't use it. You can't use turf. Your floodplain, it only makes sense to do turf. I mean, we want all the kids to be able to use it. And the only way to have that happen is to have a turf field. It makes sense. I mean, you don't need the groundskeeper for Fenway Park down there for the grass to grow. And that's what you would need in order to keep it going in the city. Every major park in the city that's had grass has failed. Let's face it, people. It's failed.
Ambridge hasn't failed. Ambridge hasn't failed.
Miserable. Not the level. Have you seen Ambridge after soccer? It's a mud pit. So please, I'm just asking that.
I have seen it
The
after.
people, I would just ask that the people.
It's not a mud
Excuse
pit.
me, I didn't interrupt you.
He was quiet when he spoke.
I would just ask that we do the right thing here. And that would be to have a field that everyone could use the most amount of time, with the least amount of repercussions when it comes to flooding and things of that nature. Thank you.
Anybody here who has not spoken would like to speak? Okay, let's go with these guys first.
Well, my name is Rick Casita. I lived in Malden for like 25 years. I'm involved in sports here. I coach at the high school. My kids have played forever here. And just looking at it from the athletic point of view, I mean, I know that's not the most important thing, but these gentlemen are right. That's the only way you'll be able to play, and it's the way of the world. Every town you go to, every field is being turf. So if you don't want your kid to play on turf here, you gotta be playing when he goes to play in Reading and Melrose and Medford. They're everywhere.
Are they at K-8 schools where little children are playing?
Yeah.
They
Yes.
are?
Yes. Yeah.
I'd like to see the list of K-8 schools, not middle school.
Okay, but please, so, are you finished, sir? And would you folks please introduce yourself? I'm sorry.
My name's David Gillis. I'm a Lake Park resident. As well as a coach, resident, I'm also a parent. Both of my kids go to school here. My kids cheer here. My kids play football here, play lacrosse, play baseball. We live 30 seconds away. This is our closest field. There's times when we don't have a place to go because of weather. That's no fault of anybody here except for Mother Nature. With that being said, recess at school. If it's hailing, snowing, whatever, kids can't go out. Wait till the next day. You can't do that here. With the turf field, that is an option. The drainage, I'm a union plumber as well. That's a huge thing. You start talking about digging up pipes. We don't know what these pipes look like. No one in this room, including myself, doesn't know what these pipes look like. So that might be another problem if you go that route. You're talking about going on Salem Street, digging down from the street. That's a big problem. That's detours. That's kids getting to school late. That's parents going out of their way. I think if we go to turf field, synthetic turf field, that is, without a doubt, we're talking about bringing the crumbs into the school. But what about the kids that go across the muddy field to get to school? You're telling me that those pesticides don't get into the school? Listen, I love all you teachers. My kids love you. I just think the turf is the best way to go, and that's just my opinion. Thank you.
So I saw Penny and Carrie. I'm not sure which one of you raised your hand first, so go right ahead.
I just wanted to point out just one thing that I haven't heard anybody say, because a lot of people saying good things, but the one thing I want to say is that no one's really talked about is why they like natural grass in the first place. There's a lot of reasons why natural grass is great, but one of the biggest ones is we all want our kids to have fresh air and sunshine and exercise, right? You go on an artificial turf field, you're not getting fresh air. Real grass, natural grass is alive. It takes the sun's energy and it turns it into living grass. It sucks the heat energy out of the air and it takes it out, so it cools the air. It also gives off cooling water vapor. So if your kid is standing on a summer hot day in the hot sun on natural grass, they're actually getting cooled by that grass because it's alive. It gives off cooling air. Basic science, middle school science here, okay? Synthetic turf, artificial fake plastic, the sun hits that. It's not grass, people. It's not grass at all. It's plastic. It's worse than asphalt. It gets hotter than asphalt. Even the manufacturers of this turf, they put warnings up that you shouldn't go on in a hot, sunny day. So if it's a sunny day, that turf field is gonna get 50 degrees hotter. The manufacturers put guidelines saying you should stay off the field when it's super hot, and you're supposed to irrigate it to keep it cool. So people talk about them like they're equivalent, but they are not. They are not. So when you're saying, using these community preservation funds to preserve open space, you have to think about what you're doing. If you want kids to run around in the sunshine and get fresh air, I do too, but it doesn't give off fresh air, it gives bad fumes. And there are studies that back that up. It gives off lead fumes, all kinds of fumes. But the temperature is the biggest thing. Penny?
I want to bring it back to the kids. I'd like to know, I guess, if or when. For me, it sounds like it's already a done deal. So I'd like to know when it's going to be done, how's it going to affect like our recess time, our learning time. How long does this take? Is it done during the summer? Is it going to be done during the school year? And the gentleman mentioned, all kids deserve all parks. There are parks in Malden that my children, I'm a taxpayer, my children are allowed to go to. It's locked up. Howard Park is locked up. McDonald Stadium can be locked up. There's lots of charter school parks that are locked up. So I understand all children should deserve all schools, but let's get real here. There are lots of parks in Malden that my kids who go to a public school are not allowed to go to. So the timeline of how long?
I just want to say one thing, Penny, about the walking up to the fields.
Yep.
You mentioned Howard Park and other parks. On off hours where there's no one in the park, that park's not locked up. So your children can access the park like anyone else in the city when the park's open.
Well, why are they locked up?
Sundown anyway. That's incorrect, sir, because we unlock it every morning, 7 days a week, and it's locked up every night, so that's not accurate.
Okay, I think we're just gonna have to, I was trying to get Joe
What
over
about the
here,
time?
but anyway.
How long will it take?
Okay, that is something, I believe both the projects are about, whichever way we went, we're talking about a 9-month project. Okay, and that is something that, you know, we certainly will, we certainly will work with the administration on how this works. And I know
It hasn't been done yet. How are we gonna trust that? I mean, nothing has been brought to Van or Lauren.
we weren't even
It's so
sure.
bizarre.
Okay,
Sorry.
we were not even sure whether we could get the funding together. Once, and we just recently got the funding together. Now that we know we have it, now we're bringing it out and we're telling folks, and we will be working with them. We just did, Forest Hill Park was just built beside the Forest Hill School. I met every week with Principal Concannon, the construction crew, and we had a weekly meeting to talk about what was going on. We even did blasting down there, okay? And dealt with school children all year long, kids that were on, you know, on spectrum, etc. We worked through it, okay? We will work through this too. Is it inconvenient? Absolutely, no question about it. Okay? It was inconvenient for the parents dropping kids off. I mean, there was a lot of moving parts. There will be a lot of moving parts with this too. Okay? We'll all have to be patient. We'll all have to work together. Okay? But we will work through it, and in the end, we will have something that will benefit everyone. And I just want to make one other statement that, you know, when we're trying to say these things are hidden, etc. There was another project that took place, the Open Space Planning Committee project, and I was on it as well as Councilor Winslow. We had many meetings. We publicized it everywhere. We had meetings here. We actually had one here on a Saturday at my recommendation because I wanted to give people an opportunity who maybe couldn't come at night to a meeting. Okay? One of the driving forces of the open space planning, we had surveys, etc., was the fact that we needed better recreational fields. So that is part of another series of meetings in addition to all the CPC meetings that have been taking place talking about this subject. Okay? So I just don't want anyone here to think that, I know you do think it was done kind of in a vacuum, but there have been many, many meetings discussing this going back a couple of years. Yes, and we have 2 minutes. Before I go to John and Brian, I just want to see if anyone here has any closing remarks because we are going to be out of here in 2 minutes. So,
just have a quick one. You know, I mentioned at the start the analogy about shoes. I would love to give every parent the opportunity to have the own unique field and get their kids their own shoes to the level they want. The challenge is we as counselors in a city, there's only kind of one thing, you know, it's one field, and we have to do the best for as many as we can. So we will work through that, and I do appreciate you know, people coming out tonight. Thank you for coming out. I really do appreciate all the hard work of the Salemwood teachers. I knew you guys a few weeks back was with you at the fundraiser you put on to raise money for your kids, and I know how passionately you work, and I hear that. And I mean, that's one reason why we pushed this project. This is a big potential investment that will benefit the kids at Salemwood, and that's why I push this forward. And it is one of the things we have to work on the community to work, and I am committed as a counselor to work to see we get more voices involved in the city. And one reason why we're here is because I'm starting to work on this. Councilor Murphy's starting to do it. We need to work hard on that, but we are here, and that's a start. Thank you.
and with that, we're going to we're just going to close it up here. You can do it in 1 minute, Brian.
Yeah, I can do it in 30 seconds. Briefly, other people who were on the Open Space Committee, myself, Joe Levine, Maria Louise, and Debbie Burke also here. And the other thing is just, I put in an ask to have the Malden Board of Health to do an analysis and a study on this, and for them to report out. My understanding is it's comprised of physicians. And so that still is an open question. I would like, because if the health risk dissipates, I think that's good for everybody. But
Thank you.